Ladies and gentlemen, from a catacomb buried deep beneath the streets of the New World Order, this is the Remnant Underground. And now, here's your host, Michael J. Matt.
This is what a feminist looks like! Show me what a feminist looks like!
To people of all genders here with us today, let's find a space where we mutually, consensually look out for each other's pleasure and allow the vast, limitless range of desire to be expressed. Let's make a revolution of desire.
We are here to say, as women, we're not taking it anymore.
Okay, so they're not going to take it anymore. Whoopi Goldberg is just, well, she's had enough. And she's not going to take it anymore. Take what, Whoopi? Do you know what she's talking about, Rob?
I don't think anyone does.
I don't think so either. Here's a woman who in the 1990s was the highest paid actress of all time. Today, her income is nearly $5 million per year. And as of August of 2015, she was worth $45 million. She gets to shoot off her mouth every day for 5 days a week to 2.7 million viewers on her daytime TV show, The View, one of our favorite programs, eh, Rob? Yeah, that's great. But she's not going to take it anymore. That's the main thing. And what we want to know is take what? What is she talking about? All the praise and all the popularity, all that money, she's just not going to take it anymore. She's so downtrodden. And then there's this gal. Check this one out.
We're still marching, we're still protesting, but now we have to also organize.
Jane Fonda. Are you serious? She's still alive? So what is it? Again, what is Grandma Jane protesting? Does anybody know? What is she protesting out there? She seems pretty comfortable personally. I mean, in fact, Jane just kind of split up with her boyfriend or whatever the guy was, and she picked up a nice little bachelorette pad in Los Angeles. The price tag on that was $5.5 million. This was after she sold her mansion in Los Angeles. I guess it used to be Elvis Presley's mansion, so it was a pretty nice digs. She sold that for $13 million. And of course, this doesn't include the Santa Fe Ranch, which she owns, which is worth $20 million. Despite all that, she's feeling downtrodden, and she's not going to take it anymore, and they're all going to go out and protest. Protest what? What are these ladies so angry about? Does anyone actually know? I pored over YouTube videos just to try to find out if I could find some consensus exactly what are they doing out there. They rant, they rave, they weep, they swear, they're foul-mouthed. But about the only two things I could come up with where that you might be able to identify as some sort of a consensus: hate for Trump and the freedom to have more sex, which means having more abortions. That seems to be about it. They hate Trump, and they want more sex. Now, this is the most spoiled generation of human beings in the history of the world, no doubt. But their cause is, well, it's a good bit less than glamorous.
Our body! Our way!
I mean, I'm not kidding. It's almost comical. This George Soros-backed, now international movement that last week had marches in London, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles. 600,000 of these gals marched out in Los Angeles. They met up in all 50 states on 6 continents: in Colombia, Nigeria, China, Spain, even in Iraq. Somehow in Iraq, they managed to get the ladies together to protest I don't know what in Iraq. You'd think they'd have a few more problems over in that part of the world than this, yeah. Demonstrations all over the world protesting what? These ladies, these delicate young things, are marching out of hate. The entire Women's March has got to be the largest hate group in the world today. They hate everything. They hate everyone, from the president, the United States, to Christians, conservatives. Heck, at last year's Women's March, remember our hero Madonna, she even suggested that maybe it was time to blow up the White House.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Can you imagine if I did that from down here? If Rob did that, suggested it's time to go blow up the White House? That'd be the end of your underground, and all your donations to try to help us out probably wouldn't get us out of the federal penitentiary into which they would throw us. No hate there, though, not in the case of Madonna. No, why? Because laws prohibiting hate speech, evidently, only apply to conservatives. That's the way this whole thing works. That's why the idea that persecution is coming is not exactly an astute observation that only a brain surgeon would come up. Obviously, that's coming. That's what this is all setting up for. But it's ironic, because you remember all the concern for those homegrown terrorists and Ruby Ridge and all those gun owners and everything else under Obama, under Clinton. That's all we heard about was how dangerous these homegrown terrorists. Now what do we got? The left is involved in a highly financed resistance movement, and resisting what? They're resisting the federal government, the United States government, the White House, the President of the United States. These people are anarchists who don't give two hoots about democracy. The democracy that they used to claim was so sacred in their book. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about the democratic process or the American voters or the will of the people. They don't care about any of that. But there's something else that's going on here, and we're going to try to tackle it tonight. Get to what I believe, anyway, is really at the heart of all this. It's downright evil. Look at this photo. Little knit, pinkish, reddish hats, right? These delicate young ladies are the daughters of Madame Defarge, remember? Charles Dickens, in A Tale of Two Cities, is writing about actual historical events and actual historical groups of people, including these women who were known as les tricoteuses, or the knitting women, famously watching Madame Guillotine in Paris during the Reign of Terror. They would watch the executions every day, knitting the symbolic red liberty caps between the deaths as the blade was going up and down. They're knitting their little liberty caps. Les bonnets rouges, the red hats. They hated the king, they hated the church, and they hated the ruling class. So they used yarn to sort of keep a record of who they needed to take out. So a character, of course it's a literary character, a fictional character, Madame Defarge, but she symbolizes the nature of the reign of terror during the French Revolution, in which radical Jacobins engaged in mass political persecutions of all the real or supposed enemy of the revolution, to be put to death by the will of the mob. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the little red-hatted ladies are back. Now, in fact, they're all over the news last week, as I just pointed out, and they're actually knitting those little bad boys. They're knitting the little hats.
Together, we came up with this idea of the Pussy Hat Project. Cat Coyle, right next to me, created this incredible pattern.
We've been trying to make the point down here for a long time that the revolution in the church, in the state, it's not 50 years old, it's centuries old. You see, this is a patient revolution. This is a Masonic revolution that thinks in terms of centuries, not years. It's a revolution against Christ, against his church, against the old Latin Mass, against his mystical body, and now, today, against the family, against gender, against the unborn. The bloodthirsty women, and women and men, of course, but it's interesting that this is a women's movement. The bloodthirsty women are on the march again. They're bringing their daughters to the Place de la Révolution once again. Here, it's one of the more, I think, unnerving photos from last week's Women's March in D.C. Check it out. And look how young these girls are. Look how angry they are, how filled with hate. Nobody sees a problem with this? Doing this to little kids? Kathy Muldoon, a high school librarian from Dallas, Pennsylvania, took her 2 teenage daughters to the New York rally and said that marching gives her daughters hope. She said this year's action is set against the backdrop of the Trump presidency, which, quote, turned out to be as scary as we all thought it would be, end quote. As scary as y'all thought it would be. What is so scary again? Because we're a little confused. What has Trump done? Now remember, we're conservatives. We don't look at Trump as the champion of the rights of Christ the King or the Catholic Church or the Catholic Restoration, which is what we fight for. We see it realistically about what Trump actually is and what he isn't. So what in the world, as far as the left is concerned, what has Trump done? Other than, take a little bite out of the terrorism problem, make people feel a little bit safer on in that regard, or make the economy stronger than it's been in decades. Remember the old slogan that we used to hear? It's the economy, stupid, not the social issues. It's the economy, stupid. When Democrats are running for the White House, remember that? Well, I guess it's not the economy, stupid. I guess it's not the economy anymore. Now it's just abortion and gay rights. That's all they got. That is their cause célèbre. Abortion and gay rights. Because Trump, he's lowering taxes, he's bringing millions of jobs back, he's lowering unemployment for blacks and for women to all-time lows. He's doing things that even liberals would normally, I would have thought, would have been totally behind. Things that I don't necessarily agree with, like moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That makes me a little nervous. So they can't even go after him now with their favorite little scare term, anti-Semite. They can't do that. So now what is it? What is it about this guy? What is it that makes them so hate him? What has he done to enrage the knitting women and their emasculated little male accomplices? I think I know what he's done. He said a few words in defense of the unborn. That's what he's done. And last week, he had the courage or the political sense, whatever you want to call it, to stand in solidarity with you, with me, and with everyone in this nation who believes that 60 million murdered babies in America is enough.
And most importantly of all, it is the gift of life itself. That is why we march. That is why we pray. And that is why we declare that America's future will be filled with goodness, peace, joy, dignity, and life for every child of God. Thank you to the March for Life, special, special people, and we are with you all the way. May God bless you, and may God bless America. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Folks who believe that abortion is not a victimless crime, he stood with them. That every time a baby is murdered in his mother's womb, there's a father who's now an accomplice, who's also guilty of infanticide. There's a doctor who gets to legally murder an American. And there's a mother who went into a delivery room carrying a child in her womb, only to leave that child behind, alone and twitching in a bloody pail. Now, if you say that that doesn't leave a permanent psychological scar on the people involved with that, then you're suggesting something much worse than I am. You're suggesting that we've dehumanized ourselves to the point where it does not leave a scar to do that to a baby. And if we've reached that point, then God help us all. When a country's judges, citizens, activists, when they scream for the right to slaughter babies, to slaughter our own, the most innocent among us, this has an impact on us all. It's not a victimless crime. Obviously, there's a dead baby for one thing. Well, in this case, there's 60 million. But it does have an impact on us, on our nation, on our morality, on our sense of right and wrong, on our sanity. And I really wonder how many of these millions of women, men and women, marching in the streets all over the world with their little revolutionary caps on, how many of them had an abortion? How many of them paid for an abortion? How many of them demanded that someone else get an abortion after maybe getting a woman pregnant or something on the part of a man? How many of them have blood on their hands? Is this why they're so angry? Because abortion puts them into a different category of angry altogether? Because they can't blame society anymore? They got their equal rights. They have their free sex, more sex than they know what to do with now. But then they committed the worst crime a person can possibly commit, killing his own child, her own child, infanticide. They have to be angry. Otherwise, they'll implode. They're enraged at themselves. And to feel better, they need to either make everyone else as miserable as they are by keeping it easy to make the very same mistake they made, or they need to get everyone to lie to their faces and tell them that everything they've chosen to do in their lives with their freedom has been just fine, including murdering their own children. You saw Whoopi Goldberg a moment ago. Well, she had an abortion when she was 14 years old. And she's part of the the system, the rotten, degenerate system too. Who knows what went into her life, her young life, to get her to the point where she had an abortion at 14. We're all victims and perpetrators now in the world in which we live now. Or Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda's mother had 9 abortions. Madonna was also in the video. She has admitted to several abortions. She's accused of having as many as 10. I don't know if that's true, but the abortion and Madonna have been discussed a lot because she's had a few. But again, Trump is no Garcia Moreno. He's not some champion of the kingship of Christ. He's not going to come out tomorrow and outlaw all abortions in this country. We wish he would, but I don't think he's going to. Even if he wanted to, they wouldn't let that happen. But you see, he's suggesting something. He's suggesting by standing with us that there's something wrong, there's something evil about abortion that makes a civilized society, a sane and moral society, want to at least restrict it. But even that suggestion reminds them of the horror of this thing called abortion. He's siding with the basket of deplorables who believe in God and who believe in life. And being the demons that they are, so filled with hate, they will do anything to shut him up, to shut us up, to shut conscience up, to shut God up. And see, poor Donald Trump, he's not an old hand at this. He's more or less stumbled into this bloody war between Christians and the worshipers of Moloch, one of the many pagan gods worshipped by means of human sacrifice. That's what abortion is. It's human sacrifice. Why don't we just go ahead and admit it? Pagans, you see, they worshiped Moloch and they sacrificed their own children to him, at least one of their own children to him, and then they were ritually murdered and then placed in a sacrificial altar of fire in order to show their solidarity with Moloch. Some followed the Canaanite practice of placing under the front doorsteps of the family home the bones that remained after their own child had been burned, to prove that they were willing to sacrifice to this demonic god. Well, I think that's exactly where we are right now. And you all know what Moloch looks like from our artistic or artist renditions. Sure, we can put one up on the screen right now. No, Rob, that's Madonna. Put the other one up. There we go. That's what Moloch looks like. Why Madonna was dressing up as a pagan god at the Super Bowl last few years ago, I have no idea, but you can kind of speculate on your own there. And the reality about all this with abortion and Trump is that he is passionate about ending partial birth abortion. And I think this kind of gives things away. Because you and I, in this audience down here in the underground, there's not a huge moral difference between partial birth abortion and any other sort of abortion, early abortion, it doesn't matter, other than the horror factor. And let's talk about that for a few moments. Because at 3 months, abortion, it's all sterile, it's insulated. We can still pretend it's not really that little baby with the little fingers and the little heartbeat and everything else. It's just a bit of tissue, a glob of tissue that can be vacuumed out and disposed of, right? It's so clean. We don't have to think about it. And we've tried not to think about it for a long time. But partial birth abortion, it's a little different. Now, leaving aside for a moment the lack of a true moral distinction, when a society approves partial birth abortion, that's when we've crossed over into a dark place where only people who are severely psychologically desensitized at a dangerous level can be comfortable. You see what I'm saying? I mean, what is that like? Let's think about that for a moment. A woman, a young woman walks into a doctor's office. She gets prepped in the usual way. She signs the necessary forms and she prepares to go through with what, since the dawn of time, has been a sacred and a beautiful process. whereby our species is propagated, whereby a child is born, a new generation is strengthened and sustained, new life. The genetic similarities and physical appearance between mother and child can be examined. A baby's first little cry, the dramatic moment when she first pokes her little head into the world, far removed from the safety and the warmth and the comfort of the one that her mother has provided for 9 months. And when she gets ready to meet everyone, this is the moment of birth. The first breath, still connected to her mother by the umbilical cord. And then with doctors and nurses standing by, the very people who would normally receive this little baby, who would clamp and cut the cord, who would give her her first tiny little diaper, wrap her in a little blanket, put her little hat on her head, and give her back to her mother. But instead, they stab her in the back of the head. She stiffens in pain. She screams. And then everything goes quiet. A mutilated little corpse, still attached to its mother, in a silent room. No baby cries. Just a terribly empty silence of death and murder accomplished, and the dripping of drops of blood into a tin basin. That's the procedure. What kind of sick, twisted society allows such a thing to go on? And what happens to the people, the doctors, the mothers, the fathers, the legislators, the judges who are involved in such a gruesome and bloody and sick crime? No society can allow such evil to go on every day and yet sustain itself. Even Donald Trump knows that. And millions of Americans know that. But the women in little red hats, they're demanding the right to do this procedure over and over and over again whenever anyone wants to do it. You see, this is demonic in the true sense. Partial birth abortion is just honest abortion. It's what it really looks like. Only it removes our ability to fool ourselves, to pretend that we didn't know it was a little baby. Now we know. We know and we don't care. And that's the moment when we cease to exist as civilized people. That's the moment when we cease to be fully human. When our souls are officially dead. When we can't feel anything anymore. When we become worse than pagan. And see, this is the problem. Trump dared to call an end to this sick and clear and obvious procedure, this murder, this infanticide. He called for an end to it, for whatever reason, whether it's political or whatever. He called for an end to it. And the demons are now swarming out of hell and coming to America to make war on this man. He's not even a Catholic. But he dared to call for an end to the demonic sacrifice of babies. And we need to be careful because this is a revolution of total anarchy now that will end in another reign of terror. Surely that's how it's going to end. Look at the rage and the hate on the faces of the ladies out there on the mall in D.C. last week. Imagine what these people are going to do if and when Trump loses in 2020. Imagine the revenge. Imagine the hate. Imagine the price they're going to make us all pay. Imagine the steps they're going to take to make sure this can never happen again. And that haters and racists like us will never have the right to speak again. And that MOLOCH will continue to get his little dead babies from now until doomsday. President Trump is doing a good job, and we've supported him where we can. But ladies and gentlemen, he does not possess the spiritual firepower needed to go up against the demons that now oppose him. We do not agree with Trump on everything, obviously. But look at the man's enemies, for heaven's sakes. They are legion. The very worst enemies of the cross. The enemies of Christ. The outspoken enemies of the Catholic Church, of the family, of all of us. This is his enemies. This is what he stumbled into. And this is going to get really ugly, and only prayer and sacrifice can drive demons like this out of our country. They want blood in the streets, your blood, my blood, the blood of the innocent. And we need to do all in our power to wake up the Catholic Church, the Catholic world, to the fact that our church, the Catholic Church, the only power on earth strong enough to defeat them, is instead being co-opted by them, seduced by them. The same people that are behind the red hats at the women's marches all around the world are now exerting incredible influence over the Vatican. There's strong rumors even right now that Pope Francis very soon is going to take steps to undermine the teachings of Humanae Vitae against contraception. Very soon this is going to happen. The Vatican is openly working with the population control and the World Without Borders, the Soros, the Jeffrey Sachs, the Sustainable Development crowd, the folks who hate Trump almost as much as the ladies on the mall. You see, it's all the same revolution, inside the church and out. It's the same. You can't separate the church and the state, and not truly. This is a war between God and Satan. This is a war against God, against life, and against the Catholic Church. And if you stand for God, if you stand for life, and if you stand for the moral teachings of the Catholic Church against gay marriage and abortion and gender ideology in the years to come, you are looking into the eyes of persecution, very real persecution. The little red hats are back, ladies and gentlemen. And Madame Guillotine is getting all dolled up once again. So we need to get serious. We need to call for things like praying the rosary again. Ooh, how rubish. Pray the rosary? Yes, exactly. Nothing else is going to save us. Pray the rosary every day. Resist the agenda of Pope Francis, who seems to have lost his mind. Pray for his conversion, in fact. And pray for the Trump administration. You never Trumpers out there, get over it. Start praying for this guy. Pray that he will continue, if nothing else, pray that he will continue to be hated by these enemies of God that we've been talking about here tonight. He's far from perfect, don't get me wrong, but they hate him for a reason. And it's the very same reason that they hate Christ and they hate us, because we're not going along with their diabolical, godless New World Order. I'm Michael Matt for the Remnant Underground, and we'll see you next week.